Welcome to Confession Stories, a place where we share raw, emotional stories full of twists, deep feelings, and truths that are often hidden. These are stories that move us, challenge us, and sometimes even change the way we see the world. Today, I want to share my own story, one that still haunts me and weighs heavily on my heart every time I speak of it. My name is Ava, and I am a stepmother, approaching my 40th birthday. This is a story about how my life, once full of hope and promises, spiraled into a nightmare I never saw coming. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating, true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end and like the video because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. Please hit the like button to show your support. It all started so innocently, so normally, just like any other day in my life. I had been happily married to Thomas, a man I loved dearly. Thomas had 2 children from his previous marriage, Ethan, who was 20, and Jack, who was 18. I always knew that being a stepmother would come with its challenges, but I also thought that with time, everything would settle. The relationship between us was somewhat distant, but that was natural. I was the new woman in their lives, and I understood the importance of giving them space and letting them adjust to the changes in their family dynamic. After all, Thomas and I had been together for a while, but it wasn't always easy to find the right balance. That afternoon, Thomas was away on a business trip. It was just me and his 2 sons at home. I didn't think anything was out of the ordinary. In fact, I felt a strange calmness about the day. I was standing in the kitchen, preparing dinner, and the only sound that filled the room was the clanking of knives as I chopped vegetables and the bubbling of the stew pot on the stove. The house was quiet, peaceful even, and I felt a strange sense of comfort in the solitude. The quiet was almost deafening, and I took in the warm, rich smell of the stew, hoping to create a nice meal for everyone when they returned. Then suddenly, from upstairs, I heard hurried footsteps. Before I could even turn around, Ethan burst through the kitchen door. His face was pale, eyes wide with panic. "Mom, come up here right now. Jack is about to die." His voice was filled with urgency and distress. Hearing those words made my blood run cold. I had no idea what was happening. I felt my heart race in my chest as the words echoed in my mind. "What do you mean? What's going on with Jack? Did he have an accident? Is he sick?" The questions flooded my mind. My breath quickened, and I didn't have time to think. Without hesitation, I dropped everything, my knife, the cutting board, everything, and ran after Ethan. We moved fast, almost in a blur, my legs carrying me up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. Ethan led the way, his face grim with worry, his footsteps loud and hurried. I could hardly breathe, the fear and confusion clouding my thoughts. When we reached Jack's room, I had no idea what to expect, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when the door swung open. There, standing in the middle of the room, was Jack. He was completely naked, his slender body illuminated by the soft light streaming through the window. He wasn't smiling in a happy or relieved way. His expression wasn't one of pain or fear either. Instead, there was something about his smile, something unsettling, almost sinister. I froze in place, unable to process what I was seeing. It was a sight that made my heart stop, my breath hitch in my throat. My body stood still, unable to make sense of it. "Jack, what are you doing?" I stuttered, my voice trembling with confusion. I tried to look away, but it was as if the image had been etched into my mind, impossible to forget. A part of me wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my body didn't respond. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Jack moved quickly. He crossed the room in a few strides, grabbed my hand, and pulled me inside. His movements were forceful, deliberate. "Jack, stop!" I tried to pull away, but it was as though my body was locked in place, and his grip was too strong. The door clicked shut behind me, and I turned around in panic. Ethan stood there, blocking the door. His eyes held a mixture of confusion and something darker, something that made me uneasy. It was as though he was torn between something he didn't fully understand and something far more troubling. "Ethan, open the door. What's going on? Why are you doing this?" I tried to maintain my composure, to stay calm, but my voice quivered with fear. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could feel was the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. Just as I was about to take control of the situation, something else happened. A weight suddenly pressed down on my shoulders from behind. Ethan was close now, his breath warm against my ear. His hands gripped my shoulders gently, but there was a strength in them that I couldn't escape from. I felt a chill run down my spine as he whispered, "Stepmom, we can't stand it when we see you with Thomas." His voice was low and hoarse, almost like a confession. It felt like the world around me had stopped spinning, and I was stuck in place, unable to comprehend the meaning of his words. "What are you talking about? I don't understand," I stammered, trying to turn around to face him, but his grip tightened, holding me in place. His gaze never wavered from me. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no guilt, only a strange sense of determination. At that moment, Jack approached us step by step, almost like he was savoring every moment, drawing out the tension in the room. He leaned in close, his face now only inches from mine. His eyes, cold and calculating, bore into me, as if he was trying to read my very soul. "Mom," Jack whispered, his voice flat and emotionless, "please indulge us." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my throat constrict, my chest tightening. It couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "It can't be," I screamed in my head, but my body was frozen. The children I had once cared for, the children I had tried so hard to protect, were now turning against me. I tried to push them away, to break free from their grip, but I was trapped. Jack stood in front of me, Ethan behind me. Two walls closing in, leaving me with nowhere to run. The fear surged through my body, paralyzing me further. "Let me go!" I tried to scream, but my voice faltered, weak and trembling. It was as though my voice had abandoned me, leaving me powerless. Jack smiled, a small, sly smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "Mom, don't try to resist," he said, his voice soft but filled with an unmistakable command. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want you to know how important you are to us." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating me. What was happening? Why was this happening? This was not what I had signed up for when I married Thomas. I never imagined that things would ever reach this point. The minutes stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. I tried to hold on to whatever shred of sanity I had left, but it was slipping away. I tried to fight, to push them away, but my body no longer listened to me. It was as though my mind and body were no longer in sync. Every touch, every movement from them seemed to take away a part of me. I felt myself losing control, my resistance becoming weaker and weaker. I could feel the conflict within me, the deep sense of guilt and humiliation warring with something else, something unfamiliar. It was like a storm inside me, a whirlwind that I could not stop. I felt my body respond in ways I didn't want it to, in ways that terrified me. I knew what was happening was wrong. I knew it crossed every line, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't escape it. With every passing moment, I felt myself sinking deeper and deeper into this chaos, losing more and more of who I was. The principles I had once held so tightly to were slipping through my fingers like sand. I was no longer the person I used to be. I was no longer in control. I had become a pawn in their game, a plaything for their desires. The days that followed felt like a blur. Every morning I woke up next to Thomas, his peaceful face a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged inside me. His warmth, his trust, everything I had cherished in our life together now felt like a cruel joke. I felt trapped in a never-ending cycle of guilt and fear, unable to break free. Each time I looked into his eyes, I saw only love and trust I knew I had shattered. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. The silence between Thomas and me grew heavier with each passing day. I could no longer look him in the eye without feeling the weight of my deception. I carried my secret like a stone in my chest, heavy and suffocating. The smile that had once come so easily now felt like a mask, hiding the deep sense of shame and fear that had taken root inside me. In the evenings, when Thomas was at work or out with friends, I found myself alone with Jack and Ethan. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. Every time I saw them, I could feel their eyes on me, watching me, waiting for the next moment to strike. Their presence was like a shadow, hanging over me, making every room feel suffocating. They had taken control of my life in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. And with every passing day, their hold on me grew stronger. At first, I had tried to resist. I screamed, I pushed, I fought. But it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a pebble. The more I fought, the more determined they became. It was as if my resistance only fueled their desire, making them bolder, more daring. The moments I once hoped would pass never did. Instead, they turned into habits. And I, who had once prided myself on my strength, had become weak, emotionally, mentally, and physically. My mind screamed at me to stop, to get out, to run, but my body no longer obeyed. The struggle became less about what was happening and more about my own internal conflict. I felt like a prisoner in my own body, as though everything I had once believed in had been stripped away piece by piece. My own thoughts had become my enemy. Every time I tried to make sense of what was happening, the truth seemed further out of reach, buried beneath layers of guilt and shame. There were moments when I would look in the mirror, searching for the woman I once was, the woman I had hoped to become, but all I saw was a stranger, someone broken and lost, someone who had let it all slip away. My reflection stared back at me with empty eyes, hollow and distant, as though I had ceased to exist long ago. I no longer recognized myself, and I didn't know who to turn to. There was no one who could understand the darkness I had fallen into. How could I explain to anyone what was happening? How could I tell Thomas, the man I loved, that his sons, his own flesh and blood, had broken me in ways I could never repair? How could I tell him that I had become their victim, their puppet, controlled by their every whim? I couldn't even tell myself what was happening, let alone anyone else. The shame was suffocating, and every time I thought about confessing, a voice inside me told me that it would be the end of everything. Thomas would never forgive me. The life we had built would be destroyed, and I would be left with nothing but the ruins of my own mistakes. The weight of that possibility paralyzed me, making it impossible to take any action at all. But there were moments when the guilt became too much to bear. When I was alone in the quiet, I would find myself crying, my tears soaking into the pillow as I clutched it tightly to my chest. I wanted to scream, to shout, to release all the pain and anger that had built up inside me. But I couldn't. The silence around me was deafening, and the walls of my own mind seemed to close in tighter with each passing day. And so I continued on, trapped in my own silence, my own guilt. I began to wonder how much longer I could keep up the facade. How much longer could I pretend that everything was normal? How many more days would I spend lying next to Thomas, pretending that everything was fine, while my soul withered away inside me? Each night I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to take me, only to be haunted by nightmares. Nightmares of what had happened, of the things I had allowed to happen. Jack and Ethan seemed to haunt me in my dreams, their eyes following me, their voices echoing in my mind. I couldn't escape them, no matter how hard I tried. They were inside me now, and there was no way to get them out. I tried to find solace in my work, in small distractions, in anything that could take my mind off the nightmare I was living. But nothing worked. Nothing could distract me from the fact that I was living a lie. My life, my marriage, everything I had believed in had been built on a foundation of deceit. I had let it happen. I had allowed myself to be manipulated, to be used. And now there was no escape. I tried to reason with myself, to tell myself that I had no choice, that I had been powerless. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had allowed it to happen. I had been weak, and now I had to face the consequences of my own actions. But how could I face Thomas? How could I confess to him the unimaginable? How could I tell him that I had betrayed him in the worst possible way? And yet, every time I thought about telling him, a voice inside me told me that it was too late, that if I told him, it would be the end of everything. There would be no forgiveness, no redemption, only pain and destruction. The thought of losing him, of losing everything, was too much to bear, and so I remained silent. But I couldn't keep the secret forever. The weight of it was crushing me, and I knew I couldn't live like this much longer. I had to make a decision. I had to face the truth, no matter how difficult it was. But what truth was I facing? The truth of what I had allowed to happen, or the truth of what I had become? I didn't know. But what I did know was this: silence was not the answer. Silence would only destroy me. It would destroy everything I had ever cared about. And if I didn't speak up, if I didn't take control of my life again, then I would be lost forever. I wanted to ask you for help, for advice. Should I tell Thomas everything? Should I come clean and face the consequences? Or should I remain silent and try to live with this burden, hoping that time will heal everything? Please, if you've read this far, don't judge me. I just want to find some relief, some peace. I can't carry this burden alone anymore. I need to know that I'm not the only one who has ever felt this lost, this broken, this trapped. From my story, I've learned that silence only leads to more pain. It leads to more secrets, more lies, and more suffering. I know now that I should have spoken up sooner. I should have faced the truth from the beginning, no matter how difficult it was. But it's never too late to make things right. I just have to find the strength to do it. And I will. No matter the outcome, no matter the consequences, I will find a way to break free from this darkness. I will find a way to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my peace. Thank you for reading. Please share your thoughts. Your words could be the ones that help me find a way out. The story of Confession Stories ends here. If you found this story thought-provoking or interesting, please support us by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Your thoughts and opinions mean the world to us. Please don't hesitate to leave your comments below. Your sharing gives us the strength to continue bringing more stories, more truths, and more real-life experiences. Thank you and goodbye. We'll see you